Happy to continue to take questions. We have about 15 minutes, I guess, in total. I have a couple of questions. You've already submitted some. I'm going to stand here. I'll ask you to speak out to the audience and out to the virtual viewers as well, and I'll pose the questions. I'm going to start. One of my colleagues texted me and said, "This all sounds like a lovely love-in you're having there for yourself." Guys, it all sounds great. So I'm going to ask the contrarian amongst us, and I'm going to say, this all sounds great, Anthony. But actually, there's lots going on outside there. There's government issues, there's kind of wider corporate issues. And we're saying, look, this is great. We have a lovely program going. But actually, there's a lot to be done.
Oh, you want to challenge that?
Yes.
Oh, where do I start?
Well, please do.
So look, this is a forum that allows me and others in the SME sector to try and reach out and engage with others. This is one of thousands that are going on at any time. You can get on a plane, you go to Lisbon, you can go to Web Summit, if you want to meet 40,000 people and get through that. They're all part of a journey. And you have to figure out which parts, which networking, which associations do you join up with in order to meet your goals for your business and for your personal requirements and for your staff requirements, but primarily if you're looking at it from a business lens for your business. So should I be in Lisbon at Web Summit? No, that's not my audience. So I'm not going there. Should I be here? Yes, I should be here because this is part of the jigsaw that I mentioned earlier that allows me to start engaging with other types of organizations, whether they're multinational organizations or perhaps my customers are here in the room or watching on a screen somewhere. So this is much more important. So I would be contrarian, but I'd also say, look, it's part of the game. It's part, you have to play the game in business. And this is one of the pieces, the many pieces in that game.
Thanks, Anthony. I'll hand that to you, Fergal, because I want to pick up on that point. You're probably an earlier stage startup, but how do you decide which ones to take part in, which ones not? Like, you could spend your day going to events and conferences and talks and all of that. How do you decide which are the ones that you want to go for and which are the ones that you don't? What's your decision process?
Yeah, so for me personally, I would look at a few things. Okay, am I or is the business going to benefit from this particular engagement? So are we going to grow, whether that's by learning, whether it's by revenue, whether it's by market share? How are we going to grow the business? Are we going to make contacts out of that? So is the business going to grow? That's the first thing that we would look at. The second thing is who's involved. So who are the people that are involved in putting this thing together? So when you look at Dublin BIC, you look at SkillNets, you look at the businesses that you had already signed on from the larger organizations, we look at that and go, you know what, there might be an opportunity here. If there is an opportunity here, we need to be involved in it. So you look at who's involved. And then you look at the next thing we looked at was the topic. So like the topic of procurement. So again, the timing for us was probably perfect in terms of that because, as I mentioned to Magella, we were just looking at moving from SME type businesses to larger organizations and how do we get into that procurement process with those larger organizations. So you were talking about procurement. So that was perfect again in terms of us for the topic. So it's those three things that we look at. Look, as a business, is there some way that the business can grow out of doing this? Who are the people that are involved in it? Are they good people to be involved with? And finally, then, is the topic something that's timely and right for us? Because you could be looking at like scale up stuff that's 3 years down the line, and it's not. You're not ready for it. So why get involved in it? So all of those three things came together in this program.
Superb. Liz, if I could come to you, and we've heard, I think, from a couple of the contributors, and you brought it up yourself, around a sectoral view of the programme. And where might we refine that as we move forward from a SkillNet perspective, as you look at kind of the areas? I know there was a question came in, and Anthony mentioned around kind of ed tech. We've heard about financial services. Have you a view on kind of the big, broad buckets that you're seeing from a SkillNet perspective that we should maybe start to focus on as we move into next year?
That's a good question. I mean, we're in about 75 different industries, so we're quite happy to represent all industries across the country. I think if we can get a model that works, there should be no reason why we can't replicate that wherever we want to go. And really then it becomes about where are the multinationals and where are the SMEs and where have we got enough collective mass to make sense to go into that vertical that might be interested in this program. And I think what you said earlier was really interesting, that whilst you might not be on the right call with the right people at that moment, there has already been a lot of engagement from the multinationals but I know who you should talk to in my organisation. And there's I can see another branch going off there already of how that might work. And your comment on PayPal was really interesting. I was thinking that was exactly the right one for you. Also, just in relation to what the guys had said there as well, and a lot of people have brought up procurement in the public sector. And being in the public sector in Skilnet Ireland, we're huge buyers. And when I talk about investing 60 million a year, we buy 60 million of services through our networks, through ourselves each year. And we're changing as well. And that mechanism is changing. We have directives to support more SMEs than ever. And so I think challenging assumptions around how hard it is to navigate that procurement or ruling things out because of what has happened in the past, that's a constant assumption that should be challenged by SMEs as well, because the public sector is changing too, and they've had to move at pace with what's happened in the last year or two as well. So it's one worth bearing in mind that we'll probably tackle in the programme too. And is there, are you seeing from the public procurement perspective, because at some point we're going to hit that roadblock where you come into a big government department and there's a 12 or 24-month procurement cycle. Are you seeing advances in there, a speeding up of that process? What are you seeing from your perspective? Yeah, we've seen lots of advances over the last year or two. And the piece of the business I work in has to be renowned for agility. I've had to put programs on the ground around Brexit and customs, around COVID responses, around reopening of businesses. And they don't have that luxury of 6 months in procurement to wait to get on the ground. And a lot of other departments are finding that too. I would say as well that it's very much governed by the amount of spend, and there are much easier wins in smaller amounts of spend in lots of buckets than one big amount of spend, and they tend to move more quickly. Even in the HSE, we've seen Martin Curley pitching to us as well, and you can see what he's doing in there. He now has a whole part of his business which is all around moving quickly, getting agility, getting proof of concept, and then moving it into procurement. So yeah, I think that the landscape's changing. And there's probably a piece of work for us early next year where we explore a specific strand, I guess, around procurement in government department. Yeah, absolutely. Maybe. Mark, I see you nodding your head.
Yeah, like my experience with procurement in the public sector or any large customer, you need to understand the problem statement, or you need to have a relationship. So you do need to have that sort of internal sponsor. So, we wouldn't tender for anything in the public sector unless we had a sense of who was buying and had we done any work. Do they know who we are? So there's the value that we can bring. And only then, we wouldn't do anything sort of blind. Now, you might do and say, well, there's a large public sector body that we want to establish a relationship. So we'll invest time, we'll do a tender out of the blue, and we'll shrink wrap it, and it'll look beautiful, and they'll answer all the questions. We won't expect them to buy it, but we use that as a jumping off point for the next dialogue. So now that we know you through this process, we're going to know you lots for the next time you come around. So yeah, you got to choose your battles and choose them carefully, because you can spend a lot of wheels, spend a lot of time and money in a process. But if you know your customer and you know your stakeholder, that will definitely help. And that's not necessarily to do with size or scale. Are you answering the question, the problem they're trying to fix? I know we asked for submissions and they were very tight, but you kind of said we nailed it, because we said, this is what we do, here's what we think you said you needed, and here's how we'll help you fix it. Correct. Yeah. So you can get that in one page. Yeah. You can do. Very good. I'm going to go to a question that came in from the panel, and it would be, I'll throw it open and ask one of you to pick it up. We've spent our time thus far looking at domestic sales, and there's a question, can we get to overseas and export sales? And is there a piece of work in the programme that we could address within that? And I'll throw that open, see who'd like to pick it up.
I can give you our SME perspective on it. The way we've approached it, and it was a bit of advice given to us from a larger company, was to identify businesses that are in another country but have an Irish branch. So we looked at businesses who were quite large in the UK, but they might have only had a small operation or a small office in Ireland. We then approached that business in the Irish market, did a really good job for them in the Irish market. And this client that I mentioned earlier on that we're meeting from the UK this afternoon is actually a result of that. So we did business with them here in Ireland. They went, "Can you do that in the UK for us?" And we went, "Of course we can." So they're there, and we are now getting business. We're basically taking over their advertising contract for the UK market as well. So that's how we've approached it, and it seems to be paying dividends. So it's perhaps don't look at the UK or the US as a market and go, "Okay, who are we going to identify there?" Say, is there actually an Irish company that's in that country that we're trying to get into that we can actually maybe do some work for here, first of all, and then get a champion there to kind of sponsor us in the other country?
Anthony, I see you nodding your head. Have you a perspective on that?
Well, yeah, I do. I actually, there's two different routes that I would immediately consider. And the first one would be present yourself as international. So what you're doing is you're selling yourself and your services, and it doesn't matter what they are, but you're selling them as an international company. So the buyer or potential buyer will have to dig hard to figure out, are you American? Are you British? Are you from Germany? And that might put you in an advantageous position, or it might not. You might be just in with a whole bunch of others. But then, you have to think about who's buying. Now, the other side of that would be, well, do you want to present yourself as Irish? And what are the advantages of being that? And one of them is, as Fergal says, Fergal, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you might not want to present yourself as Irish if you're trying to pitch to the City of London, because they maybe don't like the paddies, for whatever reason. So you have to decide, it's back to this focus, and you have to decide, what are you as a business? Who are your customers, and what do they think? It's not really about what you think. It's about what they think and how do they present. What are your values in their eyes, and what are your smarts, and what are you bringing to them in their eyes? If you're bringing an Irish voice and they don't want to talk to the Irish people, then you don't bring that. However, sometimes that can be an advantage. So you decide which one it is. Don't sit in the fence, in other words.
Yeah. Mark, I'm going to come to you. I want to pick up the notion, I'll throw it to the floor as well. This notion of connections and collaboration, Ola. You've mentioned a couple of times, you met a couple of guys here this morning, you've had some chats, it's moving along, we're meeting people first time face to face, and we're getting back into it. From a corporate perspective, how do I continue to build my connections? I've come into this program, I've invested a bit of time. I could easily walk away and say, actually, didn't really work for me. But I've got to work the room, I've got to work the corporates, I've got to work Dublin BIC, I've got to work it. How's that working from your perspective?
In this case, I have my day job, and this is over and above. And I was just thinking about it there, internalizing both in myself, but in my own organization. How do I bring the energy from this room back internally into Expleo and say, like, lads, you've got to get on board. So, I've got a sales job to do internally now, to capture the energy, the excitement, and all the capability that's here amongst us all. So right now, that onus is on me to spearhead that. But my job now is to open that up, and let's see how we can use Expleo as an example of some of the right things to do, take our learnings and play it back for the next sort of corporate who may be a big Ryanair or a Paddy Power, as mentioned earlier, or somebody else, But it's a case of trying to capture the essence and distill it down and get a level of excitement. Now, the great news is we've got a great local MD and a great management support structure, so I don't see it being overly onerous, but there's stuff happening in here in the medtech world which is outside of my industry, so I need to bring my colleagues in on the journey as well. So it's a case of being internally evangelizing innovation and evangelizing this forum.
And I think it talks to actually what's at the core of this program, that we've got to find that Mark Kenny's at the front of Expleo, and then we've got to get you to evangelize internally for us, because if we try banging down that big door, we could be there forever. So our job is to get you, and then get you to get the rest.
Well, we all help each other, you see.
yeah. But it's actually that, and I think we're on an education piece. I think we're trying to shape a kind of a sales funnel over the next couple of years, where somebody like you joins us, remains with us, and becomes our evangelist internally.
Correct.
Yeah. Dennis, I'll come to you. I think you had a question. There's a mic there from Louise.
Yeah, just a comment, you mentioned it earlier on, was around selling into if you're an SME and you're selling into a larger corporate, one of the main problems we find is okay, we can solve a number of pain points for the entity, but trying to identify compelling immediate pain that they would have. So I suppose we found a lot of our pitches back to the corporates kind of generic. Okay, if you've data pain, this is what we could do. If you want to accelerate into product, this is what we could do. But kind of a suggestion or an idea might be, if the corporates identified these are the top 3 immediate pain points that we're budgeted for, we're willing to transact on, and then it could enable either an SME like ourselves give a much more targeted response. But it also might unlock kind of partnership and co-selling, where we might buddy up with another provider on the program and go back with a compelling, a compelling solution for them. So it's more a kind of question around, could we get the corporates to identify immediate pain points, and then you could almost brainstorm it through the group.
And I think we probably started that, Dennis, with the presentations, but you could argue they were a bit one-sided. The corporates that this is what problems we have, where there may be opportunity as we evolve into kind of a more workshop-based format, where and hopefully we'll be back in person when we get to the next iteration of this next year, and we can actually go and do this stuff inside in corporate offices. Very good, very good. Yes, we have a question down the end.
Firstly, just to commend BIC, super program so far. Obviously, it's very early days, but enjoying it. It's great to get in front of some of the corporates, even if it's virtually. Just firstly, to stick up for the over 50s grey-haired directors, male directors. I suppose just reading Michael Smurfit's biography recently, up to the 80s, if you weren't a Protestant male, you wouldn't get near a boardroom in Ireland. So into the 90s, very good for women to get on to. So we're going through different phases, and obviously it's evolving. But I suppose from my experience being on a number of boards, I think if you've a bit of grey hair, it can be useful. We've lived through a few recessions, and we can be helpful to younger entrepreneurs at different levels to realise things are not always on the up. So I just want to give that in, and there's still a dire shortage of females on boards, and it really has to be addressed at all age levels. So I suppose John Hume had this wonderful idea of an All-Ireland board with unionists and nationalists, and the unionists would have a very conservative approach to things, and we might have avoided the crash of 2011. So he often talked about that. So just in relation to the programme, really enjoying it. I suppose a little bit nervous. Today's great pitch is, are we going to see some metrics and some feedback? So from my startup, obviously we're very, like everyone here, we're very eager to engage with startups, with corporates. Previously, Leo ran the Plato program and the Skill R, started from 1997, and there was 2 corporates appointed to a group of startups and SMEs, and that was very, very successful. But that was a long engagement. So I suppose just would like to hear about what the outcomes will be, how the outcomes will be measured. I would love to have some feedback if I'm rejected in the talent show.
Yes.
If I'm voted out, you guys pressing the buzzers up there, I can take that. But I would love some feedback from the corporates. And also after the initial meeting, Mark, we're certainly not asking you to keep involved for 2 years, but is there going to be more engagement through Plato, for example? We got a wonderful opportunity to really get into the meat of the corporates we're involved in. So what's happening after this? Will we know why we're not a fit? Will we get some feedback? Will there be engagement after that? But listen, guys, thanks very much. Wonderful opportunity to engage with corporates, and I really appreciate it.
I'll take it, and then maybe I'll ask Liz if she'd like to comment. So the first one is the process, and I think Virgil mentioned we're kind of making this up as we go along. So we are very much in a. You said it much more diplomatically, but we're in very much a kind of a pilot phase, and we're building this program as we go. So I think as we're going through, we're learning the steps. We didn't know the steps when we started, but we're learning as we go. So I think where we're at now in the process is we've seen the corporates pitching to the SMEs. We've received the submissions from the SMEs back to the corporates. And now we've hit the problem that you've all hit. So we're trying to move the corporates to kind of review them and to come back to us. And I think that'll happen in November. If you had asked me at the start, I would have thought it was October, but an extra couple of weeks in the process. But it will happen because the people that are working with us, the likes of Mark and his company, are very committed to what we're trying to do. So we will get that. So in terms of the process, I think as we move through November, all of the corporates will have reviewed your submissions. We will get detailed feedback, and we will give you that detailed feedback to say, didn't fit for now. But I do make the point, you're joining an ecosystem, you're not joining a program. So you might not fit today, but you may very well fit in 6 months' time or in 9 months' time, and we will continue to offer you opportunities, which is what we're trying to do. So the answer to the question is we'll give you the feedback, and that feedback will be relevant for today. And then we will say, but stay with us because new corporates are joining. And I think, again, it was you, Fergal, we're talking about sectors. And, as we get more participants onto the program, we probably won't offer you everything, Pat. We'll come back and say, actually, there's these people in, they've a very specific, or do you want to talk to them? And I think it'll become much more tighter as we move through it. And the third one then you said was around engagement. And I just want to be very clear, like, this is not a training program or a mentoring program. We did ask you to do a bit of kind of training before we got started. That was just limbering up, getting on the pitch. This is a business program. And I think both Liz said it and Mark said it. Success for us is POs. That's what success looks like. And if we get there by the end of the year, early next Q1, I think we'll have a start. Mark I have my pen, Mark, so you're not going anywhere. But we have that. But actually, success will look like to us over the years to come. Have we built an ecosystem? Have we built the engagement marketplace? And are people writing business to each other? That's really what success looks like. And I think we need to build a big funnel no more than you're doing. We started off, I think, with 103 SMEs, and we had about 15 corporates, and we're working our way through that now. I think we'll double that as we get to next year, and then we'll double it again. It goes national, as Liz said. We get into sectors. So you've joined an ecosystem, not a program. And if we can build it properly around a marketplace engagement, I think that's where the real benefit comes from.
And I think Mark and I were just chatting in the corridor there, and there's a big element of that timing piece of, you might have pitched to a multinational with a specific issue today and it's just not right, but it might be right in 6 months' time because it might be right for their customer in 6 months' time. And we were talking about a way now of making sure we have an ecosystem or a repository or whatever we want to call it, of being able to keep hold of all these moving parts, so that when a new MNC comes on board, or indeed an existing one with a new challenge, that we have all of that to hand. So I think it is all about the timing piece, the longer term, and just making sure we probably have a bit of work to do behind the scenes of making sure we've got the right platform there to manage all of that.
And I do take your point, though. What we need to get better at a little bit, Pat, to answer the question, is to say, you submitted, we took it through the process, it hasn't worked, and maybe it's a portal or something where you go in and you're looking, it's almost a self-serve or something like that.
Yeah.
So you're not kind of saying to us, well, I sent it to you lads 3 or 4 weeks ago. It's gone a bit radio silent. So we need to probably get a bit better at the comms element of how do we manage. We got that. Mark's looked at it. They're not interested. Here's why. But actually, if you brought it around this way and brought it back again, he might be. And that, I think, will get us to be a very valuable place.